The very first month of our marriage that I was having to operate this budget, I was running short of money. And so I said, well, I'm not sure about this budget thing. I think that you need to give me some more money. And then he said, well, where is your record of expenses for the last month? And I looked at him and said, are you saying I'm a liar? And I said, okay, I will write this thing down and show this man. And sidebar, because he was earning a lot more than me, do you know the kind of thoughts that were going on in my mind?
Hi, welcome again to the When I Wanted Out talk show. I'm still your girl, Teleola Kola-Edun. Welcome to a new season. We do hope that you've enjoyed what we did previously and you're looking forward to a new season. Now, on this episode, we're unpacking intergenerational patterns and their impact on relationship satisfaction and fulfillment in marriage. Simply put, how your family history affects your happiness in marriage. Now, to discuss and unpack this topic with me is a fabulous guest, Mrs. Modupe Ehirim. She's the founder and the lead counselor at the Right Fit Marriage Academy. She works with both men and women to become persons that their spouses look forward to coming home to. She's also the author of 2 well-sold-out books, Marriage is Not a Trap and 30 Reasons Why Couples Quarrel About Money. She's of Yoruba origin, happily married to Mr. Boniface, her husband of 37 years, over 37 years actually, who is also of an Igbo origin. Together, they have had 4 lovely children. I would also like to add that Mrs. Modupe Ehirim handled my premarital counseling before I got married, so it's such an honor for her to be with me today. So please help me welcome Ms. Modupe Ehirim. Thank you very much, Ma, for coming. I really do appreciate.
Thank you, Teleola, for having me.
The pleasure.
It's good work you're doing.
Thank you very much, Ma. It's a pleasure to have you here. So to unpack this topic, what are intergenerational patterns? What does that mean? What does that look like? What does my family history have to do with anything?
Okay, that's a really great question that we're starting with. Intergenerational patterns is something that we all are aware of. It's just that the way we think about it is what makes it to affect our families. So essentially, a pattern is something that is repeated again and again. And when you then begin to say intergenerational patterns, it means that it's a pattern that you see in one generation, and you see it in a second generation, and you see it in a third generation. So a really vivid illustration to start with is, so perhaps you have a man who is pretty hot-tempered. And so in his home, he's the law and everybody just keeps quiet when he comes in. Nobody pays a lot of attention to that. But essentially, the children who grew up in that home, if they're male, it means that they're just observing and learning and understanding that a man can be hot-tempered. So they just grow up to become a hot-tempered person too, and then they grow up and have children, and if they continue that pattern, you continue to see it. So intergenerational pattern is just a word that we use professionally for observations that are made in groups of people, communities, about how they do things, and over time, they just become known for it.
So what are examples of intergenerational patterns that play out in marriages? We've talked about hot-temperedness, but how does it affect a husband and wife dealing in a home now?
Okay, so essentially what happens is this. When 2 people marry And I think I need to give some background because people always ask, why are we bringing all these big sounding psychological things in today's world? Our parents and grandparents didn't have to do this. But 100 years ago, if you wanted to get married, chances are the person you're choosing to marry grew up in the same village as you or a neighboring village, which means that generally you got exposed to the same kind of paradigms, the same kind of beliefs, you had the same models, and so essentially you were choosing somebody who you were not a stranger to.
That's right.
In today's world, even if the person is from your village or was your neighbor, the truth really is what they experienced about life is very different from you. So coming back to intergenerational patterns, so you have a man and a woman. For example, the one that is almost always coming up in my counseling room. So you have somebody who grew up in a home where conflict is treated as something you should ignore.
Right.
And you have somebody who comes from a home where conflict was treated as something that should be addressed immediately. Now, when they come together, they each assume that their map of the world is the only map.
Right.
So the partner who comes from a conflict-averse home, that's what we call it, whenever issues come up that they need to discuss, hot topics, hot conversations, they withdraw because for them, just the trigger that is starting that conversation is saying to them, peace is about to be taken away from this household, withdraw. Whereas the same trigger is saying to the other person, peace is about to be taken away from this home, don't let it be taken, address the issue immediately. And because they both really think that their map of the world is the only one, imagine the scenario. So the person who wants the matter to be addressed begins to look like an attacker to the person who wants peace at all costs. The person who wants peace at all costs begins to look to the person who wants the issue to be addressed as somebody who is avoiding issues. And believe you me, without somebody bringing it to their attention.
So who do we need to bring it to their attention? Like if we say the person that is conflict averse or the person that is trying to fix the issue, how do we both meet? Where is the compromise? Because yeah, it sounds so familiar because I am the one that wants to solve things immediately. I want things solved now. Let's talk, let's trash it, and let's move on. But my husband is the opposite. He's just like, look, we're not going to deal with this now. So where is that compromise? I need to compromise.
Before you look for who needs to compromise, both parties need to understand the situation first. And usually I say to people when I speak with them, because we all move at different paces, the partner who becomes aware first is the one who may have to make a lot of compromise. Not because they're giving up, but just because the person who has more knowledge is the person who leads.
The person who has more knowledge is the one who leads. I think that's crucial in understanding your power within the dynamic.
That's the really first thing. But generally for everybody, and because we're doing this on a show and most people will be hearing who are in this situation, the first thing that you need to know, whether you are already having crisis or not having crisis, is just to realize that there is a lot that you do not yet know about your partner. The Gottmans, they're a couple that have done a lot of research, and what they have taught us and shared with us based on actually bringing couples into their laboratory over years and watching them is that you do need to build what is called a love map. And folks, love maps are not exotic language. You already are doing it. It's just that you need now to understand why you need to do it. A love map is the knowledge that you have of your partner. So let's say, I married at 27, for example. My husband met me, I think I was 25. So he knew me for 2 years before we got married. What that means is that there is 25 years of my life that he does not know. And this life, the people I lived with, the people I interacted with, the community, what was the norm, those are the things that have shaped me. But in those 2 years that he has lived with me, is it possible that he has even scratched the surface.
That's true.
So the same thing with my husband. I mean, he's lived so many years before I met him. Let me share a very interesting personal example.
We're here for this.
So when myself and my husband were preparing for marriage, so he says, money is something that causes a lot of trouble. So let's just talk about it now. Do you want us to do money together? My husband comes from a tribe where the man, his ego is tied to him being the breadwinner. So he said, I'm ready to do this, but, so that we won't be quarreling. And naive me, who had seen my parents, do life together. I mean, I don't remember that if you ask somebody for money, so I said, fantastic, let's do money together. And then he said, okay, so let's do a budget. That was the first time in my life that I was hearing of a budget. The only rule that I had for living, as far as money was concerned, is don't spend any money that you don't have. Also, I went into marriage straight from my parents' home. My mom would stock the store and then he would go and take things. So when he said, let us do this budget, I said, okay, explain it to me. Then he said, you have to do this. So I looked, okay, my mom buys food stuff, yes. All right, she buys grocery items, yes. But as far as clothes are concerned, clothes just used to come. And here was a man I didn't know at that time who, prior to me getting married to him, because he's 12 years older than me, had been keeping financial records for 15 years. So when he said budget, what I was just learning is something that was part and parcel of his own life, and it was his father that taught him. So he said, are you sure you've said everything? I said, yes, I've said it. The very first month of our marriage that I was having to operate this budget, I was running short of money. And so I said, well, I'm not sure about this budget thing. I think that you need to give me some more money. And then he said, well, where is your record of expenses for the last month? And I looked at him and said, are you saying I'm a liar? Have you seen me buy any other thing other than these things that we are eating? And my husband put his foot down and said no. So I think I went on for another 3 months or so, and frustration, because now I was really seeing that I was short of money. And I said, okay, I will write this thing down and show this man. And sidebar, because he was earning a lot more than me, do you know the kind of thoughts that were going on in my mind? It is because he is the person who is having the money.
Yeah.
That's the reason why he's not giving
me the money or giving me access to the money.
Yes. So I wrote these things down and I was like, wow, where was I getting the money to do all of the things that I was doing? And then I gave this sheet of paper to my husband and he looks at it and then he says, okay, that's true. The money we are assigning to you is not enough. Okay. And I'm thinking, just like that? And he said, just like that? I say, hey, explain this thing to me.
So you had to come out of how you were looking at it, because your home, it was always the case of things were just provided. And then you're coming into a home where he is also from a home where we account for every money that is spent. So that caused...
And he also had to shift. And I shared this illustration so that our listeners would actually understand. Because the thing then was, I was one way, he was another way, and we had decided to go forward as a couple. The temptation for couples is to dig their feet in and to say, my way is the way. And the other person too is saying their way is the way. Yep. And essentially all that is just happening is that they're bringing their intergenerational patterns into their marriage, as they should. But if they are going to go forward, they need to sit down and ask themselves, how are we going to go? Most couples now answer the question of how are we going to go by looking at what they like and what they don't like. We say to them, you answer that question based on what is the future that we want to achieve together. So because we had that question and it was guiding us, My husband also then realized that even though this is fantastic way is good, he was married, he had just married somebody who totally had no clue. And so allowances had to be made. So for many years in our financial records, you only saw Modupe was given X amount, no details, which was a big shift for my husband.
He needed it itemized.
Itemize everything.
Right.
Yes. So and so just look at it, the way I cook, the way conflict is resolved, the way we communicate, the way we share ideas, the way decisions are made in a group. There are as many patterns as there are things. I mean, when you hear that people fight over toothpaste, it's not really it's just, if you grew up in a home where this is the way toothpaste is done, you will start doing it that way. The question is, did your partner grow up in your home?
No. So how now, you said it's the person with knowledge that leads. So how in this case, I mean, let's just take the case you gave in your marriage. Who led?
I led.
Okay.
All right. I'm a reader, and I'm somebody who just wanted my marriage to last forever, and I had made a decision prior to marriage that I was going to be happy regardless of anything, and it was going to depend on me. So, well, what do I mean by leading? I was starting from a place of no knowledge about finances, but I knew that my husband had a good heart, and I knew that he really loved me, and I knew that he wanted me. So I started to read up about how do you relate with somebody who thinks differently from you. That essentially was it. It didn't matter to me that he was having the demand he had of me was, it was just, so if somebody does not think the same way as you, how do you relate with them? That was where I started from. And once I realized that, okay, all that is happening is just that they have a different life experience for me, they have different patterns and so on and so forth. Every time we had a conflict, then I would ask myself, is this a real conflict, or is it just our patterns that are clashing?
I really want to dig further into this trend of thoughts that you have, particularly because the woman led, and most often than not, it is the woman. If she's always told, if you want to keep your home, you will change, you will compromise. But I want us to take a short break, and then I want to go deep on that. Why is it always the woman that has to lead? Because she's more knowledgeable based on what you said. We'll be right back. So thank you very much, Ma. Even from our break, we're already going hard on this topic on why the woman has to always, well, let's not say always, most often than not, because she's told that the man is the head of the house and he would not come down from his horse to come and apologize, or because he biblically is the head, culturally he's the head. Society has made it that the man is always forward, and so the woman has to bend down for the marriage to work. Now, do you have a contrary opinion to that? Because most women are in this situation.
Well, this is what I would say. I think we have believed a lot of things based on the patterns that we have seen. And so we have now confused issues, because you have talked about headship. Every organization, every community has to have somebody who the buck stops on their table. That's just, otherwise there'll be confusion. So that's the first thing. The second thing also is that every member of that community hopefully became a member of that community based on their own personal decision. So when people argue and they say a woman is having to submit because her husband insists that she submits, the first thing that comes to mind is, has she herself thought about this home that they're in? Has she thought about the governance of it? And has she thought about the role that she has to play and the role that her own husband has to play? Let me share my own experience again. And it is because I saw this with my own parents as well. So when you're in a home or in a community where you know that every member has a role, the illustration I share often with people is this. If you are on a board and you are the financial director, and I use that specifically because the financial director usually is an accountant and the chairman may not be an accountant. If financial decisions are to be made on that board, the chair is still the chair, but the financial director had better have gone home and prepared the information that would enable that board to make a good decision. Sorry. Now, the financial director can say the chair is a very cantankerous man, he will not listen to advice, and so on and so forth, and then say that they would not prepare. Who will lose their job? The financial director. So headship is not leadership. That is something else that I have also coined. What do I mean? The head of an organization is the person who the boss stops at the table. Now, if that head is a good head, there is a possibility that there are areas that there are gaps of knowledge and things like that. A good head will defer to the person who has more knowledge, not because, it's not a personal thing.
I like that.
This future that we're creating together, this family that we are building, what is good for that family? That is what determines, how the head allocates a number of things. And I would say what I said in the beginning again, a lot of the confusion and conflict is coming because in today's world, when couples marry, it's unlike 100 years ago. So you won't find our grandparents having this conversation. Why? Because governance in a family was understood. The same model was practiced everywhere. But when my husband married me, his father was a sailor and had been away for many years. To help you understand it, during the Civil War, he was away abroad and his family had to make their way into the village. Essentially, to a large extent, my mother-in-law was a significant figure in the governance of that family because they were in a long-distance relationship. I, on the other hand, had my father with me. So I grew up in a home where the governance was focused on my dad and my mom. When my son was growing up and I bought a parenting book for my husband said, if you cannot parent the children, let me know. And for me, that was a shock. And eventually he said, my father was away all of the time and my mother did a good job. What was he saying to me? The manner of governance that I know, the woman takes a lot of decisions by herself.
Right.
So when we have this conversation, it isn't really a control issue. It is just an indication to me that that couple have not sat down to say, this is our home. How will it be governed? Who will do what? How will it be done? Because once you have had all of those conversations, when decisions are now being taken by each partner, those decisions are being taken on behalf of the family. But
sorry, go on.
Finally, there is an illustration I also use to help my clients to understand this. So if you are living in a flat that you are renting and your rent is not paid, and in your home you have agreed that it is your husband who will be paying the rent, and the landlord comes and he meets the wife, the landlord doesn't say it's the wife I met. The landlord just thinks stupid people, and every insult that he brought with him, he gives it to the wife. What is that saying to us? People outside your home don't care how your home is governed because they see you as just a family. And so I wish men and women instead of just quarreling and fighting and struggling to determine who should be head, understand that what is important for each couple is to know that they have a home, a family to govern, and different patterns of governance, intergenerational patterns, are being brought in. Now, you have to allow the future that you both want to create.
I think that's what
be
I
the
want to
decider
emphasize.
of the, and until we begin to have the conversation the way we've had it today, the way this conversation goes, what most people would want me to say is yes, the husband, or no, the wife. What that really would not help us to address the issue.
So here is what I try to understand. Both parties must know the future that they want.
That is critical.
Because sometimes one party really doesn't want the marriage. They're looking for every avenue to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can keep setting traps and hurdles for you to keep jumping so that they can back out. But one thing you have said is clear. Both parties should know. I mean, if both of us want this thing, this is the future we hope to have, then headship is not leadership.
Yes, headship is not leadership. Headship stands on its own.
Yeah.
There is no contest
We're not
about
contesting that. Yes.
Yes. However, in my own family, for example, it would have been foolish for me to be fighting over financial issues. 37 years now, I'm a financial guru. My husband will say, this is what we are going to do. I will interrogate it. Then I had no idea.
Sure.
But at the same time, when we got married, as far as building relationships was concerned, I was the one who was an expert. And my husband was not an expert there. The greatest compliment my husband has ever paid me was on my 50th birthday, and he said, I married her because I wanted somebody who would be questioning me.
Oh,
and that he has not failed me. Now, for another man, a woman who questions them would be a challenge.
yeah, to rub him the wrong way.
So, essentially, just realize if you're taking something away from this show today, the first is this. You're coming with a pattern. You're coming with a style. Your map is not the territory. Your partner didn't grow up in your own home, in your own community. So what is so familiar with you? You're a fish, you've lived all your life in water. Your partner is an animal who has lived all their life on land. They come into the water to begin to live with you. They have no clue how to survive underwater. They are dependent on you. You come to the land. They have no clue how to live on land. Both of you have got to come up with how do both of us survive, whether it is land we live on or it is water we live on. What do we need to do to ensure that at the end of the day, we are actually still existing? That really is the issue.
I really, really do appreciate this conversation because it's an eye-opener. It doesn't matter if you are the woman and you constantly have to do right to make the marriage work. There's nothing wrong. And if you're the man that has to constantly push and bend and compromise a lot more, there's nothing wrong. If both of you are aware that this is the future that we want, whoever is a leader, a thought leader, knowledge leader, will take the compromise to make sure that the marriage works. I think with that, we have learned quite a lot. Little gems here. I do hope that you are able to pick up on them. Thank you very much, Ma, for this insightful conversation. It's even an eye-opener for me. So remember, please, it doesn't matter if you're constantly having to bend over. Whoever has the knowledge is the one that will lead for the future that you hope to have. With that, thank you very much. I appreciate you watching this insightful episode. Look forward to the next one. We'll see you again. My name still remains Teleola Kola-Edun. Till then, bye.